The night was clear over Washington, D.C. The lights of the city glittered below. American Airlines Flight 5342, a Bombardier CRJ-700, was on its final approach to Reagan National Airport. On board, 64 passengers and crew prepared for landing. Unseen in the darkness, a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter designated Black Hawk 12 was on a routine training mission. At 8:48 p.m. EST, the two aircraft collided. The impact was catastrophic. The Black Hawk, its rotors shearing through the fuselage of the airliner, spun out of control. It plummeted into the icy waters of the Potomac River. The CRJ-700, its cockpit severed, went into a steep dive. Screams filled the cabin as the plane plunged towards the water. The impact was violent, breaking the aircraft into three large sections. The fuselage quickly sank beneath the surface, the dark water of the Potomac closing over the wreckage. The disaster left no survivors. A fiery debris field marked the spot where two flights had intersected in a deadly embrace. The crash sent shockwaves through the nation. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unforgiving nature of the skies. In the aftermath, questions arose. How could this have happened in the skies above one of the most heavily monitored cities in the world? The search for answers began immediately. American Airlines Flight 5342 originated in Wichita, Kansas. It was a routine flight carrying passengers home to the nation's capital. The plane, a Bombardier CRJ-700, was a reliable workhorse of the regional airline industry. It was flown by an experienced crew, Captain Richard Grant and First Officer Janice Miller. Black Hawk 12 was a different kind of aircraft altogether. The Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk is a twin-engine medium-lift helicopter. It is a familiar sight in the skies above Washington, used by the military for a variety of missions. On this night, Black Hawk 12 was crewed by three experienced soldiers: Pilot in Command Chief Warrant Officer 3, Michael Thompson, Co-Pilot Chief Warrant Officer 2 Sarah Jenkins, and Crew Chief Sergeant First Class David Lee. The two aircraft were on converging flight paths that should never have intersected. Flight 5342 was following standard arrival procedures for Reagan National Airport. Black Hawk 12 was conducting night training exercises in a designated airspace near the airport. The airspace around any major airport is tightly controlled. Pilots operate under strict guidelines from air traffic control. Yet somehow, on this clear January night, these two aircraft, with their experienced crews, ended up on a collision course. The investigation into what went wrong would be long and complex. In the wake of the tragedy, attention quickly focused on the air traffic controllers responsible for the airspace around Reagan National Airport. The control tower at Reagan National is a high-pressure environment. Controllers are responsible for guiding hundreds of aircraft safely through the airspace every day. On the night of the crash, the control tower was operating with a reduced staff. One controller was handling two positions, responsible for both local and helicopter traffic. This was not an ideal situation, particularly given the volume of traffic in the airspace at the time. The controller on duty, whose name has not been released, was a veteran with years of experience. However, even the most seasoned controller can make mistakes, especially when fatigued or under pressure. The NTSB investigation would examine the controller's actions in the minutes leading up to the crash. Were they following proper procedures? Did they miss any warning signs that could have prevented the disaster? The role of human error in aviation accidents is complex. It is rare for a single mistake to be the sole cause of a crash. More often, it is a combination of factors that contribute to a catastrophic event. The investigation into the Potomac River collision would need to uncover all of these factors to prevent a similar tragedy from happening again. The crash site presented a daunting challenge for recovery crews. The Potomac River is a tidal estuary, meaning its currents are strong and unpredictable. The wreckage of the CRJ-700 was scattered over a wide area, with some parts submerged in up to 50 feet of water. Divers from the Coast Guard, Navy, and local fire departments worked tirelessly in the frigid waters. They braved strong currents, zero visibility, and the ever-present danger of debris and jet fuel. Their task was grim: to recover the bodies of the victims and search for evidence that could help investigators piece together the events leading up to the crash. The recovery effort was hampered by the winter weather. Freezing temperatures turned the water into a slush, making it difficult for divers to operate. The wind chill dipped below zero, creating dangerous conditions for the crews working on the surface. Despite these challenges, the recovery teams pressed on. They knew that time was of the essence. Every hour that passed made it more difficult to find survivors and recover crucial evidence. The families of the victims waited anxiously for news, clinging to hope even as it began to dwindle. Section 5. Pieces of the puzzle. The NTSB investigation begins. The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, is the agency responsible for investigating aviation accidents in the United States. In the hours after the Potomac River crash, a team of NTSB investigators arrived on scene. Their mission was to determine the cause of the accident and make recommendations to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The NTSB investigation would be a long and painstaking process. Investigators would examine every aspect of the flight, from the pilot's training and experience to the maintenance records of the aircraft. They would analyze radar data, air traffic control recordings, and the wreckage itself. One of the key pieces of evidence would be the black boxes, the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. These devices record critical flight data and conversations in the cockpit, providing valuable insights into the events leading up to a crash. Locating and recovering the black boxes from the depths of the Potomac River would be a top priority for investigators. The NTSB investigation would also examine the role of human factors in the crash. Were the pilots fatigued? Did they make any errors in judgment? Did the air traffic controller make any mistakes that contributed to the collision? These are just some of the questions that the NTSB would seek to answer. Section 6. Dreams Dashed, Figure Skating World Mourns. As news of the crash spread, a sense of grief and disbelief rippled through the figure skating community. Among the passengers on Flight 5342 were members of the U.S. figure skating team, returning from a training camp in Wichita. Young athletes with promising futures, coaches who had dedicated their lives to the sport, and devoted parents, all lost in a senseless tragedy. The Skating Club of Boston, which had several members on the flight, released a statement expressing their profound sadness. Among the victims were Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov, the 1994 world champions in pairs skating. Shishkova and Naumov, who had coached many of the young skaters on the flight, were beloved figures in the skating world. The crash cast a pall over the upcoming national championships, scheduled to take place just weeks later. Skaters who had trained alongside those lost in the crash were left to grapple with their grief and shock. Some questioned whether they could go on competing, while others felt a renewed sense of purpose, determined to honor the memory of their fallen teammates. The tragedy served as a reminder of the preciousness of life and the fragility of dreams. It also highlighted the tight-knit nature of the figure skating community, as skaters, coaches, and fans around the world came together to mourn their loss. Section 7. Politics casts a shadow over tragedy. Even before the recovery efforts were complete, the tragedy became fodder for political posturing. President Trump, known for his inflammatory rhetoric, used the crash as an opportunity to attack his political opponents. He blamed diversity initiatives at the FAA for the crash, claiming without evidence that they had led to a decline in safety standards. Trump also took aim at former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a frequent target of his ire. He accused Buttigieg of incompetence and negligence, alleging that he had failed to address safety concerns during his tenure. These accusations were met with swift condemnation from aviation experts and officials, who pointed out that there was no evidence to support Trump's claims. The politicization of the tragedy was widely condemned by victims' families and lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. They argued that it was inappropriate and insensitive to exploit such a horrific event for political gain. However, Trump remained defiant, continuing to push his narrative even as the NTSB investigation was underway. The political fallout from the crash underscored the deep divisions within American society. It also highlighted the challenges of having a fact-based discussion about complex issues in an era of hyper-partisanship and misinformation. Section 8. Echoes of Disasters Past. The Potomac River crash evoked painful memories of past aviation disasters. The crash of Air Florida Flight 90 in 1982, which also occurred on the Potomac River, bore striking similarities to the recent tragedy. In that incident, a Boeing 737 crashed into the 14th Street Bridge shortly after takeoff from Washington National Airport, killing 78 people. The Air Florida crash, like the recent collision, was attributed to a series of errors and misjudgments by the flight crew and air traffic controllers. It led to significant changes in aviation safety regulations and procedures, including the implementation of de-icing procedures and improved pilot training. The Potomac River crash also drew comparisons to the Tenerife airport disaster of 1977, the deadliest accident in aviation history. In that incident, two Boeing 747s collided on the runway at Los Rodeos Airport in the Canary Islands, killing 583 people. The Tenerife disaster highlighted the importance of clear communication between pilots and air traffic controllers, especially in low-visibility conditions. These past tragedies serve as a stark reminder of the inherent risks of air travel. They also underscore the importance of learning from past mistakes and continuously striving to improve aviation safety. Section 9. The Unforgiving Sky. The tragic collision over the Potomac River was a stark reminder of the unforgiving nature of flight. Even with the most advanced technology and experienced professionals, accidents can happen. The consequences, as this disaster tragically demonstrated, can be catastrophic. The investigation into the crash will likely take months, if not years, to complete. It will undoubtedly lead to new safety recommendations, and perhaps even changes in regulations. However, no amount of investigation or regulation can completely eliminate the risks inherent in aviation. The skies above us are a shared space, traversed by countless aircraft every day. It is a testament to the skill of pilots, air traffic controllers, and the engineers who design and build our aircraft that accidents are relatively rare. But when they do occur, they remind us of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance. The legacy of the Potomac River crash will be one of profound loss and a renewed commitment to aviation safety. It will serve as a reminder to all those involved in the aviation industry that even the smallest mistake can have devastating consequences. And it will stand as a somber tribute to the victims whose lives were cut short in a moment of unimaginable terror.